I can't hear it. I just opened the stream and I heard it briefly. Welcome to the Wild Card Weekend NFL Tournament Strategy Show for the Saturday 2-game slate. I'm your host, Neil Orfield. You can find me on Twitter at PlayerQDFS. I'm here with the DFS GOAT, Alex Baker. You can find him on Twitter at AwesomoDFS. And this show is sponsored by PrizePicks, which offers daily prop-based contests. While you're coming in, please remember to give us a like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our shows, DFS offers, giveaways, and much more. Once you subscribe, hit that notification button to get alerts when our shows go live. Don't forget to also sign up for the Stokastic Hall of Fame by changing your avatar on DraftKings and FanDuel. Just download the Stokastic avatar from stokastic.com/avatar. Place in the top 3 of a contest with over 5,000 contestants. Tweet the wins to @Stokastic Hall of Fame account on Twitter if you have Twitter, or email us with your screenshot, and you can win a free month of Stokastic plus Platinum. You'll also get a shout out in our weekly Hall of Fame segment from Lofty. Alex, how are you doing this morning?
What's up, man? Doing well. It's pretty cool that we got 3 days of NFL out of the wild card round, because it feels like not long ago there was only 4 games, and now we got, what is it, 6? So should be a good weekend.
Yeah, it's a lot of, I love the NFL playoffs because it's just island game after island game, just, tons of showdown, I just wrote my article this morning, just published on flash drafts on DraftKings. Check that out as well. It's a fun, if you've never played flash drafts, Alex and I were talking about it before the show. We both love the format and kind of think the field gets flash drafts wrong. So check out my little tutorial that I published today. Let's start with some just general strategy. I mean, we kind of went over it last week, but we can go over it again because it's a 2-game slate once again. We play it a little bit differently from main slates. What are you thinking about this slate particularly? It's just 2 games. Any general strategy tips for this slate specifically, or just 2-game slates in general?
Well, we've had plenty of practice at this point, so I think that it's interesting because one game with San Francisco versus Seattle, like, we're expecting one team to dominate, where Chargers versus Jags, like, much more evenly matched and a lot more passing in that one probably. So it seems like that second game of the night is going to be the preferable one to be a game stacking, so to speak. But for 2-game slates, I mean, like, the edge is more in lineup construction than trying to, like, pick the best plays or the sneaky sleepers or anything, because, like, everyone's going to know who's going to be playing in these games, and it's hard to get too off the board without just making bad plays. So I'm definitely just trying to stick to the normal player pool, but then trying to get a little unique with lineup construction.
Okay, makes sense. And I guess just one question for this slate specifically, because we have Mike Williams questionable for the night game. How are you going to handle that if we don't have news on Mike Williams prior to the first game lock-in? How do you think you're going to handle the Mike? Like, do you want to save a spot for Mike Williams potentially if he's healthy, or Keenan Allen if Mike Williams is out, or Josh Palmer, or even like DeAndre Carter? Might be interesting if Mike Williams is out. So it'll be a different kind of slate if Mike Williams is out versus if he's in. Do you like hold open roster spots in this situation, or do you just assume it's a 2-game slate, you're probably going to have roster spots anyway?
That's fair. You'll probably be able to swap if you choose to. The other thing you could do is, in your lineups, when you're making your lineups, give Keenan Allen and Josh Palmer a little boost in projection, because they're definitely going to benefit and Mike Williams is out. And then DeAndre Carter would be the guy that you probably want to play that you wouldn't have otherwise. But there is a big risk of penciling in Carter, because if Mike Williams does play, then it's going to be hard to make a good swap. But actually, now that I'm looking at it, looks like Marvin Jones is 3,400, while DeAndre Carter is 3,600. So
Oh, wow.
you could just swap to Marvin Jones and call it a day if you don't have both in your lineup.
Yeah, those seems like pretty off salaries there. That doesn't make any sense for me. The Jaguar salaries on this slate in general don't make a ton of sense to me. We'll get into that as we're talking about wide receivers. But I guess we can. Any other general strategy points you want to touch on before we move to quarterbacks, or we can just hit them as we go?
Oh yeah, let's just hit it as we go.
All right. Well, then let's jump in and talk about quarterbacks. Again, this is for the Saturday 2 game slate. So just 4 quarterbacks to choose from. We've got the Seahawks against the 49ers. The Seahawks have a 16.25 implied team total right now. The 49ers a 25.75 implied team total going against the Seahawks. Chargers have a 25 implied team total, and the Jaguars a 22.5 implied team total. So 3 teams with pretty healthy team totals, pretty close together. And then the Seahawks at just 16.25, obviously in that matchup, really tough matchup with the 49ers. So that's kind of what we're looking at with this slate. But just jumping into quarterbacks now, Alex, let's talk about your general interest. Let's go one by one, I guess. So we've got at the top of the board, we have Justin Herbert is 6,600, the most expensive quarterback on the slate. Let's start there. How much interest do you have in Justin Herbert on this slate?
I'd say a lot of interest in Herbert because the Chargers, they throw at the highest rate of any team on this slate. Um, it looks like just based on the spread, like we have Seattle about even, but the problem is if Seattle throws a lot too, I guess, but they have a tough matchup. So let's say Herbert's probably the top of the list for me because when you got a guy that throws at a high rate, that just makes it easier to stack up multiple guys and get there. So I think he'd be number one on my list. And it looks like the ownership 35% projected. That's not bad.
Is it I'm seeing 22% on Herbert. Maybe I need to
Oh,
refresh.
okay. I let me see here.
Yeah, so in the top stacks tool, I guess let me look at the boom bust. Okay, yeah, boom bust is showing 35% ownership. So that's probably
Okay.
more accurate. Sometimes those numbers are off, but the boom bust is generally the reliable number. So yeah, we have 35% projected ownership on Herbert. That's not quite as spicy as what I was seeing in the top stack tool, but we actually still have positive leverage there. 35% projected ownership on Herbert, as you say. And then we've got the Chargers, the top stack 41% of the time, 30% of the time they're even the top value stack. Certainly interesting. Do you think Herbert becomes more or less interesting for you? Or I should say, do you think the Chargers stack becomes more or less interesting to you if Mike Williams is out?
I think more interesting because that's going to make all the other options higher value, which just means you're projected for more fantasy points with your team probably. So I think if Mike Williams is out, that'd probably make me want to play Herbert more confidence in Keenan Allen to just be the guy that has that big performance. So um I think it might not be a bad idea to just build lineups as if Mike Williams is out and then um make that swap from Carter to Marvin Jones if he happens to be in.
Yeah, I was thinking I might do that too. I mean, we'll have to try. There's a good chance that we're going to know by tomorrow morning too, and all of this
That's
will be
true.
kind of moot.
Yeah.
But I would prefer it if we don't know by tomorrow morning Mike Williams'
Yeah.
status, and it's really up in the air right now. It sounds like he's not in a great spot. Has been practicing all week, but he is traveling with the team, so I guess we'll have to wait and find out tomorrow. On the other side of that game is the second most expensive quarterback, and these, the next 3 are all very close together. We got Trevor Lawrence at 5,700, Geno Smith 56, and Brock Purdy at 53. So all relatively close there. Tell me about your interest level in Trevor Lawrence on this slate.
Yeah, I think Lawrence is pretty interesting. Kind of coming off a dud last week where they limped into the playoffs, it felt like.
Yeah.
Um, but he's been the guy that's completed passes at a higher rate than anyone over the last part of the season. So that was pretty encouraging as far as his skill level. And we saw last week they threw at the highest rate they had all season long, rushing only 28% in neutral game scripts. They were down most of the game though. So uh but that took them from being a pretty um run heavy team to neutral in our model based on that performance. So that was encouraging for stacking up the Jags stuff because like there's basically 4 teams that are pretty realistic to stack. So I'm not sure there's a ton of uh lean I have between these four guys.
Yeah, it's true. They all look pretty good in the top stacks, where there's nobody who really stands out among the rest. What about in terms of stacking? So, like Justin Herbert this year rushed for about 17 yards per game. He had rushed for around 19 yards per game last year as well. And in college, he was known as a rushing quarterback. Do you, I mean, on these two game slates, I guess I'll start here. On these two game slates, would you ever play a quarterback naked, or are you still saying, no, I always want at least one pass catcher with my quarterback?
No, I mean probably at least two to be honest, because you have to have at least four pass catchers in your lineup. So like on average you're gonna have one per team on a 2 game slate. So really like having at least two pass catchers with the quarterback probably gives you the best odds. Honestly, having like three pass catchers like is probably even better. So I'm definitely gonna lean towards stacking more on a 2 game slate.
I listened to the Lowell's podcast yesterday, and they talked about you actually pretty extensively. And Pete was noting that you have gotten more and more, you're stacking more and more. So you're no longer just doing, single stacks, not always just double stacks. You are, it seems, purposefully stacking with like three or four sometimes pass catchers. You have been lately. Is that kind of a trend that you're seeing? Like there's more edge in overstacking as opposed to understacking more and more?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I didn't like the fact they seem to think I'm a sim bro on their show,
Yeah, I don't
but
know what they're
it's
talking about.
yeah, I'm not a nerd. Like, what are they talking about? But
Haven't they seen your workout videos?
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I think the main thing is like people want to like think in terms of what's going to happen on an average week, but how many NFL games are there per season? There's like 275, right? And there's sometimes 100,000 people in a contest. So you can really go for some outlier kind of results because everyone is doing two players from a team from the same team as your quarterback. Like a lot of people are doing three, but not as many are doing four or five. So like I think oh the other thing is people with the bring back sometimes certain combinations of players are very high owned. So it's kind of a um it's not as much like banking on the other team to suck, but it's more that there can be multiple players that go off on a slate. So it hurts your odds a little bit of getting the right one to not have the bring back on a large slate, but it also makes your lineup a lot more unique.
Yeah, for sure. So what I've been doing in fantasy country is just not requiring a bring back on these two game slates because I
Yeah.
assume most of the time I'm going to have one anyway. Do you think that's a viable strategy to just not force it in, allow it to happen when it happens? I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, definitely. I think less constraints is probably better because um another one is defense where like a lot of lineups they're not going to have defense versus offensive players, so just having one of those guys makes your lineup a lot more unique. The bring back, I think, it is tough as you're saying because like you're just gonna get a bring back by default. But I'd think of it more as like a team fade where like the chance that one of these teams like doesn't produce much fantasy value is pretty good. So just fading a team completely is reasonable. And if it's a team that's opposing your quarterback, it's perfectly reasonable. So I'm definitely not gonna force it in.
Okay. So uh you say that you do allow for defense against the quarterback in these two game slates?
Um, I don't really go for that
Okay.
because yeah, you'll see games like that Indiana Minnesota one where the defense goes off and the opposing quarterback, but like there's a pretty negative correlation there because you're going to need 3 or 4 touchdowns if you're stacking up a team to take it down usually. So that makes the path to defense being the highest score a lot more narrow.
Okay. I remember we had the same conversation last week. I thought you were changing your tune a little bit, but it sounds like you're sticking to your guns. Yeah, that's true. I guess I always conceptually I'm like, well, we don't necessarily need your defense to do that great. So I guess here's a follow-up question. Do you think it's more viable if it is a case like so last week we had the Raiders were 2,200 or something, like they were by far the cheapest defense. So sometimes there might be a situation. I'm pulling up the defenses for this slate right now so I can see if we have a good example here. But sometimes there might be a situation where, the defense is the only way that you're going to be able to play. So here we have the Seahawks at 2,400. Say you want to play the 49ers with Brock Purdy and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey, and the Seahawks are the only defense that allows you to make viable lineups. Do you think it's more viable if the defense is the cheapest on the slate, and you have the extra out then of just none of the defenses really separate, and this lineup, this defense allows you to play the opposing offense, whereas the others won't? Do you think it makes it a little bit more viable at least?
Yeah, definitely, because like you're not boxed out by the other defense they're fading, because like the situation you don't want to be in. Okay, you got 2,700 left. You can either pick the Jaguars or the Seahawks, and you have Brock Purdy. So it's like in that case, going for the Seahawks, you're competing against a lot of people that have similar lineups with the Jaguars, and that's just a losing proposition because the odds aren't going to be in your favor for the Seahawks to outscore the Jaguars on the same day that Brock Purdy's in the winning lineup.
Okay, good. So that's one situation where maybe you would consider it. All right. Moving down the list, so we talked about both quarterbacks from the night game. Geno Smith, the next most expensive at 5,600. Obviously, a very tough matchup with the 49ers. Do you think you have any interest in playing Geno Smith tomorrow?
Yeah, I think like I guess the smart answer is not to play Geno Smith because this is like the team total is 16. Like he's been very solid this year, but San Francisco's defense has just been extremely good. So like I don't think it's crazy to build a lineup with Geno Smith, but he just I think picking a higher owned stack that just has a better chance of success this week is probably the better strategy.
Okay, so you're not going all in on Geno Smith against the Niners, just not that likely to hit.
Yeah, I mean 16 points is just a pretty low team total. So that's like uh the matchups making the Seahawks offense into like the Texans offense for the week. So that's kind of how I'm approaching it.
Okay, yep, that makes sense. And then we talked about that Brock Purdy stack a little bit. How much interest do you have in playing some Brock Purdy tomorrow?
A good amount of interest in Brock Purdy. Like San Francisco has been pretty run heavy. Like that's just their normal team tendency, but Brock Purdy has been very effective in the snaps that he has been throwing. Looks like over the past few weeks they've skewed slightly towards the run. So it's not like the hugest effect, but it's pretty similar to when Garoppolo was the quarterback. So we're not worried about them just running at a huge rate. And then the weapons he's throwing to are, top notch with George Kittle and Debo and Christian McCaffrey. So it's like if you like those guys, then putting Brock Purdy in the lineup with them, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and I guess that's going back to that question that I had. I was talking about stacking. To what extent are you willing to stack with the running backs in these games, or are you intentionally trying to stack with the running? I mean, we've got some great receiving running backs here. We've got Austin Eckler, Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, all Kenneth Walker. Actually, off the top of my head, I don't remember how good he is as a pass catcher. I'll have to look that up. But how much interest do you have in stacking with the running backs here?
I'd say more than your typical slate because these guys do receive so much. So like McCaffrey's getting more than 30 yards a game. That's like a WR3 level. And the other guys aren't shabby either. So um generally I wouldn't just have running back plus quarterback. I'd want to have another player as well, but I think that there's definitely a positive to throwing in the running backs on this slate with your quarterback.
Yeah, for sure. This is a great slate to do so. And I looked up Kenneth Walker stats, and now I see why I don't really have a good feel for Kenneth Walker, because the last 3 weeks, 4 total targets for Kenneth Walker, but then he has weeks in the middle. He had 4 and 8 targets in a game in week 10. So he's had some spike weeks, clearly not on the same level as these other running backs as far as pass catchers go. I got a question from the boy from Cali. He said, Neil, who's your cheap cash quarterback? The answer is nobody because I don't play cash games, but I think it would be Brock Purdy. What do you think of Brock Purdy as a cash game quarterback here, or would you just? I mean, I know you kind of just generally want to play the best projected lineups or close to the best projected, so would have to actually run a lineup. But Brock Purdy seems like the obvious answer at 5,300. He is the cheapest and projects relatively well.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you can't go too wrong if you pick anyone not named Geno Smith. So
Yeah.
the optimal rates are very comparable for the three other quarterbacks, which is the closest you can come to like the best cash plays, I guess. So I think that, yeah, Brock Purdy lets you have a little more flexibility, so don't hit that.
Dartmouth, no reply, says rookie quarterback in the playoffs, wet, heavy ball, pushed by the wind. I can't help but think things will fall off for Purdy. I mean, certainly possible. Yeah, I'm not that confident in, and especially because they're going to want to run the ball anyway. I think that's certainly a reasonable note if you think weather's a concern. He is a rookie quarterback, obviously, but the matchup is so great against the Seahawks that I still have interest in a 5,300 Purdy. Anything else that you want to say about quarterbacks before we move on and talk about some running backs, Alex?
Yeah, that's a good point that if it's rainy that we might see less running. So it does look like there's a pretty high chance of precipitation all throughout this game. So I think that um that could be a factor. We'll have to wait and see what the Vegas line movement looks like.
Okay. Well, then let's move on and talk about running backs. But first, we want to look at the lineup generator. But we've got a pretty exciting change to the lineup generator this week with game script selection feature. That's I'm not sure. I don't think it's out yet. I know that it is coming out today. But Mike, if you could pull up the lineup generator, appreciate it. Lineup generator is the perfect tool for building winning lineups for any DFS contest. Our cutting edge algorithms analyze player data and trends to help you make the best choices for your lineup. With our easy to use interface, you can have your lineups built in seconds, no more hours spent researching players. Get an edge on your opponents by using lineup generator's powerful contest simulations. It saves you time and energy. Mike, do you have this pulled up? Okay, let me. All right, I guess I gotta pull it up on my phone. Oh, here we. Okay, I see it now. Perfect. I do see it now. All right, so can you go to a DraftKings? Sure, we can do. I don't know if it's available for Showdown or Main Slate yet, but either way, we can start looking at some lineups. Maybe just go to let's go to a two-man stack and run back here, and we can take a look at some of these lineups. And Alex, you have these have all been tested by the Stokastic simulations. Every lineup that you'll get here is going to be a plus EV lineup.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, so it just kind of takes all the lineups and discards the ones that we don't think have a minimum viability, and then it's up to you to just figure out which ones you think have the best chance to win.
Okay. And Mike, can you choose a lineup? Let's go with a contrarian lineup. Perfect. Okay, so the first lineup we see here, I like it. Trevor Lawrence with Travis Etienne. So we've got the stack with the running back plus Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. Is that enough stacking for you, Alex? We've just got a three stack with Trevor Lawrence, and then we've got on the ring back, we've also got Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. This is a heavy stack here. What do you think of it?
I like it. Yeah, I mean, the thing I like is the ownership being a little bit less chalky because you wouldn't think with the chalk game stack that would be the case. But what we're doing in this lineup is we're taking a strong stance against San Francisco, where we're saying Kenneth Walker and the Seahawks defense are both gonna be the better plays. So I kind of like taking a stand against a team that's that popular.
Yeah, definitely. I like that correlation there as well. I also we should talk just a little bit about this game script feature because I mentioned it. It looks like it is not available yet, but I talked about it in a meeting yesterday. It looks really exciting. So it's basically you can choose what type of game script you're expecting the game to be. So they basically take the Vegas totals and you can choose a game script that's just neutral based on the Vegas totals. If the game goes according to plan, this is what the lineups are going to look like, and you can choose a pool of lineups based on that game script. But then it also has features where you can choose like if so, for example, the 49ers Seahawks game, you can choose a game script where the Seahawks go over, or you can choose where both teams go over their implied team total by 6 points, not fantasy points. Or you can choose a game script where both go under by 6 points, or a game script where the Seahawks go over by 6 and the Niners are under by 6, et cetera, et cetera. So pretty different lineups based on different game scripts, how they look. These are, the best lineups for different game scripts. Does that sum it up pretty well, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in Showdown where you can have access to that, it's about, what game outcome are you trying to play for? So just doing everything at a neutral level isn't always the best play. So playing a game script where San Francisco underperforms and Seattle overperforms, that could be an interesting showdown strategy.
Oh, that's so my bad. I should have had you go to it. Mike, can you actually refresh? Can you go back to Showdown? I just want to see if we actually have this feature available. I didn't realize that it was Showdown specific. I should have known that because we actually looked at that. I guess that's the only way it would make sense, right? To give this game script. Yeah. So yeah, let's go back and do a Showdown lineup. Thanks. And it might not be available. Okay.
Yeah, it's not available yet,
Okay. So
but
it's
it's
not
supposed to
available.
be this morning at some point. So by the time all you guys are watching the video, it should be up.
Perfect. All right. Uh, sounds good. So check that out later. I mean, that's a pretty exciting development for showdown lineups, being able to actually choose different game scripts and get different lineups. So you can choose, any number based on different game scripts. All right, Alex, let's move on and talk some running backs. Just looking at the top here, let me pull up my got quarterbacks open. Who do we have at the top? Christian McCaffrey, obviously the most expensive running back. We've got two pretty high end running backs here in Christian McCaffrey and Austin Eckler. I guess let's bucket these according to price a little bit. Tell me about your interest in Christian McCaffrey relative to Austin Eckler. You're going to be taking a stand on who you like at the top here.
Yeah, that's a tough one because both are fantastic players. So McCaffrey, obviously San Francisco is a little bit more likely to put up points, so that's a big benefit. He does I guess the web ball it could be a concern, and there's also Elijah Mitchell who is probably the best RB2 this week. So if you think San Francisco really dominates this game, like Elijah Mitchell could make sense in your lineup. But if you think it's a closer game, then Chris McCaffrey, he makes a ton of sense. And yeah, it's if Sam he puts up so much of his fantasy production in receiving the ball that you almost want San Francisco to pass more, which is unusual.
Yeah, for sure. I got a question that I just want to throw at you. So M. Bruno says, do you think this is a good three running back slate? Would you consider playing three runners? And in particular, would you consider trying to fit in ETN with Eckler and CMC in this two-game slate, or is that just too much money to put at running back?
I mean, it seems like a fine option. Those are all good players. The only question is who else are you going to have in your lineup? So I was thinking suspicion that it's going to be hard to get all the top price plays at any position this week.
Yeah, that might be if you decide to take that gamble on Mike Williams being out, then maybe it becomes more viable with DeAndre Carter. If you can play both DeAndre Carter and Marvin Jones in a lineup,
Yep.
maybe it becomes a little bit more viable. But without that knowledge, you're definitely taking a risk if you go in with that plan of playing all three. Of course, I guess two of those are from the later game, so you can pivot to a less expensive wide receiver, maybe. But I don't know, something that maybe you could make it work, particularly if Mike Williams is out. But certainly, it's going to be a lot of your salary. All right. So moving down, there's actually a pretty big price gap between Eckler and Travis Etienne. Etienne at 6,300. That's kind of the next bracket. Place is just Travis Etienne and Kenneth Walker. We got Etienne at 6,300, Kenneth Walker at 6,100. What is your level of interest in both of these guys?
Well, usually Kenneth Walker, I mean, would be the preferred option, but because of the matchup, ETN is almost twice as likely to appear in the optimal lineup based on our simulations. So it's hard not to go for ETN. If I'm going for Walker, I'm taking more of a game theory approach to this San Francisco Seattle game, or we're kind of gunning for a less likely outcome.
Okay, so it's Kenneth Walker, kind of a contrarian option only for large field GPPs. Travis Etienne, the safer option.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate.
Okay. And then what about the low end? I mean, we've got Elijah Mitchell kind of stands out as to me at least, the most interesting of the guys below 5,000. So we've just got those main four: McCaffrey, Eckler, ETN, Walker. Those are the RB1s for each team. And then we've got a price gap from 6,100 is Kenneth Walker, and then Joshua Kelly's the next most expensive at 5,000. Do you think you're going to be playing anybody below at this 5,000 or below level?
Yeah, Elijah Mitchell is certainly reasonable. When it comes to running the ball, he does get a good amount of carries. Actually, now I'm thinking this through a little bit. Maybe that will change in the playoffs because Christian McCaffrey is clearly their preferred option, and maybe they're trying to limit his touches a little bit in the regular season. So maybe that's the reason to be a little bit more bearish on Elijah Mitchell. But I think as far as workload, it's like any of these guys are going to be somewhat questionable. And the other guy that's kind of intriguing is Michael Hasty. He, has gotten about a fifth of the carries, and he's their third down back, so he's getting a lot of routes, but he's targeted at a much higher rate when he's out there than ETN at 21% this year versus 13%. So when he is running those routes, he's getting a lot of targets. So he could be the guy that no one's on that's a big guy.
Yeah, for sure. That's an interesting call. JaMychal Hasty kind of became a meme for me on the Theory of DFS show that I do with Blender, because I played him last year a couple times when he was the presumptive backup running back, and I played him as leverage against everybody playing the starting running back. Didn't work out. No, this year looks pretty great. Glad to see JaMychal Hasty, that name still around. I want to respond real quick. Hannah Banana was asking about best ball. She said she drafted for the first time, still not quite sure how lineup set. It's just they automatically put in the highest play from each position. So they have set positions. Presumably you're playing on underdog. It'd be quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers. No, sorry, two wide receivers / tight ends, and then a flex spot. It just each week will automatically put in your highest scoring lineup from that weekend. But you are, if your team is not the highest scoring in your pod, you're going to be eliminated after the first week. If you are the highest, and you're repotted the following week. And again, they set the highest scoring and you will move on. So just wanted to respond to that really quickly on how best ball scoring works. All right, Alex. So we've kind of talked about, I mean, man, on these 2 game slates, we really have limited options. Anybody else that you want to talk about at the running back position?
And Josh Kelly could be like a distant option, but his price isn't even that low, so I'm probably not gonna do it.
Okay, yeah, he's 5,000. Yeah, a little bit expensive there. You're not playing any DJ Dallas.
Uh, I mean, it's 2 game slate, so we gotta look at all the options, huh? I mean, he's been the third down guy in Seattle. Um, but yeah, nothing too exciting.
Now I'm curious if there are any like $4,000, because I was gonna say you have the additional out of him being the cheapest. Once again, allows you to get two lineups that nobody else allows you to get to. But presumably there are actually some $4,000 running backs, and if any of them are viable at all, maybe they would be the cheapest instead. So I'm not gonna look it up, but I guess that point is a little bit moot. You do
I
need something
mean,
from him.
Kyle Juszczyk.
Yeah, that's a good. I mean, he gets targeted some. He's maybe somebody you could consider if you want that $4,000 running back that will just allow you to get to some lineups that none of these guys 4,300 and above get to. Maybe
Yeah,
somebody you could consider.
I wouldn't recommend it, but maybe a showdown play.
Yeah, showdown, large field, maybe very large field GPP, but yeah, generally a better showdown play. All right, any other running backs? Are we done talking about the running backs? All right.
Yeah.
Well, then let's move on, and I'll tell you about our sponsor, PrizePicks. Click the link in the description below to get 1 free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum and up to $100 deposit match bonus when you sign up and make a deposit with PrizePicks. It's daily prop-based contests. There are no sharks, optimizers, or mass entries on PrizePicks. You just create a 5-player lineup and you can net up to 10x your entry fee. Use your knowledge of multiple sports with cross-sport entries. We're kind of running out of time to do NFL along with NBA, NHL. Right now is kind of the perfect time to sign up for Prize Picks because you can play all of these sports at the same time if you are interested in doing that. And you don't have to. If you don't know NHL, just play NFL, NBA, choose from the sports that you actually do know. So now is the perfect time to sign up for Prize Picks. Alex, have you had a chance to look at any Prize Picks props for today? Any that you that stand out to you off the top of your head? I know that you said that they're generally the lines are pretty similar to other sports books, so you
Yeah,
have some idea.
let's take a look at some. All right, let's um Irv Smith Jr. under. I'm not sure if he's up on Prize Picks yet, but that's our one of our top bets. Let's see. I mean, it's playoffs, so it's going to be a little bit tougher to find stuff. ETN under looks like a good position where like he hasn't been getting like a huge like work share. Like it's been about 2/3 of the carries. So
Uh,
um
I do see Irv Smith here at 16.5 receiving yards on Prize Picks. If he is inactive, would that just be voided? Do you know how that works? If it's
yeah, I'm expecting him to be active, but
okay.
like it'd be pretty unusual for Minnesota not to have two tight ends. But yeah, I mean the main thing is Hawkinson in Minnesota is gonna make Irv Smith roll a lot lower, and the only reason why Irv Smith played as much as he did in the last game is probably because they pulled all the starters. So Hawkinson didn't play very much.
Right. Okay. And then there was one other that I wanted to ask you. Oh, so Mike Williams being potentially out. Does that make you any more interested in Keenan Allen playing, 75.5 receiving, kind of a high total for Keenan Allen. But does that just the additional potential boost of Mike Williams being out, does that make you more interested in a guy like Keenan Allen or Josh Palmer? I haven't seen the Josh Palmer receiving prop, but does that kind of thing factor in for you, or do you think the books are already kind of factoring that in?
Yeah, I mean, based on our projections with Williams in, we'd take the under there, but like if Williams is out, that seems like a great line. So that'd probably be one that I would stay away from because we got so many options. We might as well just choose the ones we feel 100% confident in.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. You don't need to be taking that kind of unnecessary risk when we've already got positivity bets. Okay. Well, then let's move on. So we already talked about quarterbacks. So wide receivers are going to correlate pretty well with the discussion we already had about quarterback, but we can still talk a little bit about individual wide receivers. Starting at the top, we have Keenan Allen is 7,000, the most expensive wide receiver on the slate. How much interest do you have in Keenan Allen?
Yeah, I mean, I think a moderate amount. He looks like, um, he's the highest projected, but it's a slate where value at the other positions is really tough. So, I don't have a strong lean either way. It might be just whatever fits your lineup construction. That's probably um there's no one guy that I'm really honing in on here.
Okay. Yeah. So that is that your general take on wide receivers? Just play whoever fits your lineup. Like you're gonna generally be pairing. Like I guess here, let me ask you this: would you ever play Jawan Jennings in a lineup where you're stacking the other game? Like if you're stacking the Chargers versus Jaguars game, would you ever have Jawan Jennings in there as a one-off?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think going to John Jennings or Marvin Jones like are bad ideas. Like they're definitely going to be on the field enough to get a lucky touchdown or something like that. So those would be probably the top value plays. And then if DeAndre Carter opens up as an option, particularly if Mike Williams is ruled out after the inactives come out for that game, then he's probably going to be pretty underowned. Josh Palmer will be pretty underowned. So that would be kind of the spot where you could take a stance is go for those guys and then late swap off them if it goes the other way.
Okay. And what about guys like Jamal Agnew, Cade Johnson here, these $3,000 options? Do you think you're going to be going to any Agnew or Cade Johnson in the large field GPPs?
Probably not. I mean, yeah, these guys don't play a whole ton. It looks like Kate Johnson, he has been out there about 50% of the time the last 2 weeks. This is going to depend if D Eskridge is going to be playing this game. He just got designated a return from the IR, so that is a piece of news I'm waiting for.
Okay. And then these Seattle receivers, it's obviously a really tough matchup against the Niners. Do you think you would ever play? I guess, I mean, if you play Geno Smith, you're probably going to be playing. Do you think you'd ever play multiple Seattle receivers in the same lineup where you don't have Geno Smith at quarterback?
Yeah, I mean you can like you're just banking on your quarterback outscoring him, but Geno still has a good game, so it makes it a little bit tougher to get the win, especially with Geno being very low price. So now I'm thinking about it, I feel like having Metcalf and Lockett, you probably want Geno Smith because he is the lowest price guy.
Yeah, for sure. It's makes it makes it look a lot better if you have Geno Smith in there. Yeah, it's a tough call for sure. Anything else? I mean, obviously the most interesting part of I think all of these wide receivers comes down to the Mike Williams. Like if he's in, Mike Williams will probably be a little bit low owned depending on when we get the news. Like you said, really depends on when we get the news there. But if he's out, then we're gonna have potentially a low owned DeAndre Carter. Josh Palmer will be a little bit lower owned than he should be. So do you think you're gonna plan on saving some roster spots for wide receivers? Like you're gonna have if we don't get the news ahead of time, do you think that you will, go a different way to try to have extra spots? Or do you think it's just a 2 game slate? It's probably gonna happen naturally. How much are you factoring in the potential of Mike Williams being out for the night game?
Yeah, I think I'm probably just gonna assume one way or the other. Um, well, right now I'm leaning towards assuming he's out, given he hasn't practiced all this week. Now on the site projections, we have him in because we want to make sure that people don't get stuck with bad lineups. Like so,
Yeah.
if Mike Williams was ruled in and we had him out, then people might not know that you want to get off Carter and Palmer. I mean, or might not remember to do that. So, I think that assuming he's out though, it seems like a pretty interesting strategy. And then late swapping off of Palmer and off of Carter if Mike Williams is in. You could probably do a double swap to go up to Mike Williams um and take out another player. But uh yeah, I think this is probably the most interesting spot of the week.
Yeah, and it is nice that we have pretty good pivot options here. I guess depending on how much you're stacking up the later game, like so if you're not already playing a Zay Jones and Marvin Jones in your lineup, you're gonna have some nice pivot option. It does make it a little bit tougher as far as like, doing the full onslaught like you like to do can be a little bit tougher, but in general, like if Mike Williams, if you plan for Mike Williams being out, you're probably going to get to more Keenan Allen, who is 7,000. Then if Mike Williams is in, you can pivot down from Keenan Allen to Mike Williams is $800 cheaper. And then, we've got a kind of nice pivots at every spot with these charters here. Josh Palmer's 5,300. Zay Jones is only 4,300, so much cheaper. Makes it easy to go there. As you said, we've got DeAndre Carter is 3,600, Marvin Jones 3,400. So we do kind of actually have some nice pivots at all of these spots potentially, but of course that is harder to do if you do the full onslaught of that game and you've got all of those guys in your lineup already. Then it gets tougher. But yeah, definitely an interesting spot with that Mike Williams news kind of unclear going in. Anything else that you want to say about wide receivers?
Nah. I think who I have at quarterback is mostly going to dictate who I'm going to pick at wide receiver, though.
Okay, yeah, that's generally true for me too, I think. All right, let's move on, talk about some tight ends, defenses. But first, I told you guys about the great deal we have from PrizePicks, but if PrizePicks isn't available in your state, BetMGM probably is. So if you want access to all of the Stokastic tools and a great deal, we've got you covered no matter which state you're in, whether it's PrizePicks or BetMGM. With this BetMGM deal, you can get 2 months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $240 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when the bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all of that, you also get bet insurance on your first bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, you win the bet, you get the money. If you lose the bet, you still get your money back in site credits. It's a great deal from BetMGM and a long trial subscription to the best DFS tools out there, which continue to get better. As we pointed out, we've got the game script feature coming to the lineup generator. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Reminder, make sure you use the link or use promo code PLATINUMSUB when you sign up at BetMGM, or we won't be able to track it. All right, Alex, let's talk a little bit of tight end. Obviously, only 4 teams on the slate. We're not going to have a ton of options at tight end, but we've got actually some pretty good options here. We've got George Kittle, Evan Ingram, Gerald Everett, and then actually, Seattle tight ends options as well. Donald Parham. Tell me about your level of interest in these tight ends. I guess we'll start with George Kittle at 6,100. He's the most expensive by far. How much George Kittle do you think you'll be playing?
Yeah, I think he's best of the bunch, but there's a few things that I feel like he might be overly popular this week because of the match over Seattle being one that makes it look like tight ends are gonna excel, and then also his recent game logs. So I feel like people are gonna want to get to Kittle, so that's making me kind of lean a different direction. Um, but like the other options aren't not no one's really jumping out a ton to me. I mean, Ingram kind of closed on a high note. Well, he had his boom performances a couple of games before the last two, but I think he's a pretty reasonable option. And then, between the other guys, Gerald Everett and Fant really don't have a strong take. I think they're perfectly fine. So that might be the lowest I go though, because you are really sacrificing a good amount by going down to Parham and Parkinson, where Parham's just not on the field a ton, and Parkinson he's been playing more since Disley went down, but yeah, I guess Parkinson might be my cheap one of choice.
Okay, and he is also the minimum price for any position, I guess, outside of defense. So again, back to he gives you more outs. He doesn't have to have a great game. Doesn't need to necessarily outscore the guys more expensive, because he gives you the out of he's the only tight end that will allow you to play certain lineups that the other guys are too expensive to play. So maybe one additional out there for Colby Parkinson. Yeah, it's funny. Both George Kittle and Gerald Everett just went off in this past month in the best in the playoffs for best ball and regular season and stuff.
Nice.
They've been kind of on fire, so that's been kind of fun if you have them in your lineup and you're not playing against them. But yeah, it's really pretty good tight end. And is this, I guess, kind of similar to wide receiver in that you're just going to try to stack with your quarterback most of the time, or is it a little bit different because the prices are so different for all these guys? Like, how much are you trying to correlate your tight end with your quarterback?
I'd say a good amount because tight ends tend to produce touchdowns at a higher rate than other positions. So I think that I think picking the tight end of the team that you're stacking is always a good option.
Yeah, that's a good point, because quarterbacks don't necessarily benefit from wide receivers picking up a ton of catches, where the wide receiver gets PPR points, the quarterback, just gets a few yardage points, whatever. But then touchdowns, which is kind of the tight end realm, I've never really thought about this way, because tight ends correlate more with touchdowns than wide receivers. Like, more of their catches are for touchdowns. I suppose there's a higher correlation than wide receivers with quarterbacks in general. Like, you're more interested in pairing your tight end with your quarterback than necessarily wide receivers. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's just a slight lean because
Yeah.
tight end is just harder to get a high producer in the first place. So just getting a guy that gets a TD is usually good enough.
Hannah asks, is Dan Arnold, a sneak tight end if the Jags run 2 tight ends? Do you think you'd play any Dan Arnold? I'm going to look up his routes run real quick because I'm.
I don't think so. It looks like he has only played about 15% of the routes when he's been active.
Yeah, he played Maybe he was inactive in week 18, but he ran 0 routes. The 2 weeks prior to that, 3 and 4 routes. So yeah, Dan Arnold just not active enough that I think if I were going to go cheap, as you said, Colby Parkinson may be an option there. I think Donald Parham is somebody that I would consider playing just because he's really uh, a touchdown target for the Chargers. So even when he's not out on the field all that often, I think that he's a guy that is always live to score a touchdown. So I think if I'm going cheap, it's probably either Parkinson or Donald Parham. I'm not going probably too far off the board with the tight end, but in a 2 game slate, you certainly can consider going more off the board. But yeah, Donald Parham, 18 routes running the most. Man, that week, I have no idea what they were doing in week 18, where the Chargers just played all of their starters the full game. Now I'm thinking, well, I'm looking at Donald Parham. Maybe he actually got more run than he would have because they, late kind of decided maybe not to play their starters as much. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. I actually, getting back to that, I wanted to ask you one question because somebody in chat was asking if I would play Mike Williams, given that he is a little bit banged up. And my answer is yes. If Mike Williams is active, I think that he is, obviously always a big play threat, and the field probably won't get there very much just because we're going into the slate without that knowledge. And then even if he is in, people will have that concern. What is your level of interest? I just want to touch on it one more time. Your level of interest in Mike Williams if he is active.
Well, he looks like a great play if he's active. So I certainly wouldn't. Um, the question is really like what are you gonna be losing if Mike Williams is inactive? So it's like, are there good swaps? If you don't have Christian Kirk, that's a pretty easy swap. So you're only giving up zero point 0.9 fantasy points projection. So if you do play Mike Williams, then not having Christian Kirk in that lineup could be a smart move. But the tricky part is like if you do have Justin Herbert at QB, you're kind of reducing the correlation. So there's a lot of moving parts.
Okay. Yep. That makes sense. All right. Just wanted to touch on that one more time because I think that's, as we said, kind of the most interesting part of this slate is the Mike Williams situation. But back to tight ends. And anything else you want to say about tight ends, or should we move on, talk about briefly defenses and then top GPP stacks?
Yeah. Yeah, tight end. I think you can't really go wrong this week, it really feels like. So um the one guy I'm not convinced I'm gonna be on, like I feel like Kittle is kind of showing up as a bad value, but like some of the factors are gonna pull up his ownership to a higher level than it should be. So I'll probably try to fade him if I don't have Brock Purdy. I'd have to guess.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say you don't believe in the Brock Purdy George Kittle connection. They seem like ever since Brock Purdy's been there, George Kittle
Well,
scores a touchdown every week.
they weren't in college together, so I
Okay. They
have
didn't shower
trouble.
together. Okay.
Yeah, I have trouble buying into it.
All
It's
right.
not about them.
All right. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay. All right. We have one final great offer for new users only. You can get full access to everything Stokastic has to offer for NFL for 5 days free. Projections, ownership, 1v1 tool, lineup generator, top stacks tool, zero risk because it's all free. So sign up now using the link in the description of this video. Note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and can be added after the fact. All right. Defenses. So it's a 2 game slate. We don't have many options here at defense. Do you have any thoughts on defenses? I mean, you can just talk about defenses you like, or just like correlation with defenses, and any thoughts you want to mention about defenses.
It's hard to have a ton of thoughts, but it looks like the 49ers defense is showing up was a very good chance of being optimal. So um I think people may want to spend down because defense is the last position that they pick. So I do feel like I might lean towards the 49ers defense, but is also the most expensive. So besides that, like I think just the rest of your roster should probably determine what defense you go to. But having one offensive player versus your defense could be an advantage from a ownership standpoint.
For sure, it's going to lead to a lineup that is less likely to be duplicated, or people are going to be, not quite as close to that lineup. Definitely. Somebody in chat just asked any interest in Phil Still asks any interest in Ray McLeod because he's cheap. I don't have a ton. So he only ran 3 routes last week. In week 17, he did run 20 routes, 57% route participation. I think that was with was Brandon Ayuk out in week
Well,
17?
Debo was out,
Oh,
so
Debo, that's right.
he's kind
Yeah.
of the guy that subs in for Debo when Debo's out. So not expecting him to play very much now.
Okay. So is your answer then no, you're not going to play any Ray McLeod?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I think I am probably the same way. I get it. He's a guy who can burn somebody, put up a big play, but I think there are other options that I prefer. So I don't think I'm going to any Ray McLeod. Yeah, it's pretty crazy seeing we've got 49ers at 49% projected ownership, but we actually have positive leverage there, 53% chance of being optimal. That surprises me just given that they are the most expensive. They're 3,600. Typically, we don't really want to be paying up necessarily at defense, but they definitely look great here. All right, Alex, before we close the show, just favorite GPP stack. If you're playing in a large field GPP, who do you think is the stack that you go to?
Oh man, this one is a tough one, but
Yeah,
like our top stacks is really saying that Jacksonville and Chargers are the best. I feel like Chargers may be my favorite, even though, you know, Keenan Allen is, or sorry, Justin Herbert is going to be pretty high owned. The reason I like Herbert is because um, I think that you're going to be able to get a little bit game theory edge, regardless of whether Mike Williams plays or not, just because whichever scenario happens, like you could take advantage of that.
for sure. Yeah, I think I'm with you there. I think it would be Justin Herbert for me just because it is the most interesting spot on the slate. So we are glad to hear that we're on the same page there. Alex, anything else you've got going on this week, or anywhere people can find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be on the deeper dive on Saturday and Sunday this week. So make sure to subscribe and check those out 2 hours before lock, as well as all the other content here. So um, hopefully we'll have some more news to break on that one.
Or hopefully we won't, right?
Yeah,
Hopefully we won't
maybe.
have that Mike Williams news. I don't know. Yeah. Cool. You can find him on Twitter at AwesomeODFS if you're not already following him there. Thanks for watching, guys. Again, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We've got great shows coming up throughout the day, including the NHL Strategy Show, Noah's Advantage NBA Show, High Stakes coming out today. We've got had Kyle Dvorak on. I interviewed him yesterday. Great show, so check that out. And of course, we've got the NBA Deeper Dive and Live Before Lock coming out tonight. So stick around the channel. A lot of great content. Thanks for watching.